Hey guys, we got a quick one today because it's not something with a defined answer, more of a question I have, some stuff I'm wondering about. True cinema does not, force the answer or one answer down the viewer's throat, and neither will I. How did we get here? Well, I was going about some business this afternoon when I got a text from a guy that I play basketball with fairly regularly. Wednesdays, Thursdays, and or Sundays are the usual days in the groups that we're in that we get together and play. But the day of recording is Friday. And I was not expecting this, but he just said, "Hey man, we got a game tonight, you want to join?" And I was like, absolutely. So I did, and I just came back from that game. Now, how does this relate to what's going on? I'll tell you. Very early in the game, I made this beautiful pass. I'm so proud of it. And I make beautiful passes on a regular basis, but this one was gorgeous. And then I made some other really good ones. I had some good blocks too, some great rebounds. And for those of you who know basketball, you're like, man, this guy, I bet he hustles back on defense. He's a real team player. And yes, that's true. And I'm very proud of it. I've complained in my videos before about those players who just kind of put their head down and drive, and not in the cool Ryan Gosling way, but in the dumb way where there's 3 or 4 guys under the basket and you're like, I can take them, and then you don't even come close to getting the shot. Sometimes you don't even get the shot off. I don't have that problem. So the reason I make these beautiful passes so regularly is because, and I'm very proud of this, I am a pass-first kind of player. That's my instinct, which, I have honed over the years. And with this instinct, I find my teammates for passes, because I'm looking for it. As opposed to a lot of guys I play with who have that tendency of, like, they get the ball, okay, I'm going to score, and then they realize, okay, I'm probably not going to score, now I'll look for my teammate. And by that time, their teammates that were open or were in a good position, then, the defender's caught up to them and they're not anymore. So even if that pass does come off, then it's not going to be as good as if they had fired it off immediately. Whereas, when I get the ball, my teammates get it right off the bat. It's barely in my hands before I've already fired it off to the teammate, and then they score. So, this is because I like to see the big picture. It's like, yeah, okay, everyone wants to score, but if you're not in an ideal position to score, you would ideally just hand it right to your teammate, as opposed to trying to score. And then when that doesn't work out, well, I guess I can pass. Oh, but there's nowhere good to pass to. Yep, the moment's gone. So I say all that to say, you know what? Maybe I am missing the big picture here. But this is a subject that's been on my mind for a while. Jimothy Cool. By the way, first of all, I must clarify that this is not meant as a personal attack on anyone, who's mentioned in this video at all. This is more of a widespread mentality kind of thing. So, the reason I am saying this is because I've noticed ever since the Jimothy Coolification of Advance, more players than ever are playing Advance and trying new things, and that's great. However, I do not know if it's quite related to tournament play. I don't know if there's like a lot of overlap between, Jim Cool Advance and SPL Advance, for instance, or like the hardcore Advance players who have been around for years and are, pushing the metagame forward. Especially because this is not a phenomenon specific to Jimothy Cool. It's just something I notice a lot in a lot of players that may have come to Advance through Jimothy Cool. But, it was around before, but it's just come to a head recently, especially when ABR goes around, spouting his, scorching takes and building crazy teams. And people go, well, ABR does it. He brings this outlandish Regirock stuff, forget Salamence. And, they forget they are not ABR. ABR wins with just about anything. Funnily enough, someone today told me, BKC, you know what? I've seen you win with some real garbage. And that was really offensive to me at first because I was like, I use my own team, so thanks for calling them garbage, I guess. And then he was like, no, because only you can use it. And I was like, huh, okay. But that's, it's something I said about Heist in a very recent video, the greatest battle against McMegan, that his teams were distinctly like that. Everyone else would try to use them, and they'd say, oh, this is terrible. How does this guy win with this? But, he won with them constantly because he knew how to use them. And that's really the ABR thing. When ABR brings some, wacky stuff, then it's ABR. Now, for the the opposite of this, let's say, when it's not ABR, then most players are not going to be as apt in bringing wacky stuff. But I think just if not the Jimothy Coolification of it, which again is not Jimmy Cool's fault, or just like its widespread popularity, then I've noticed more and more people are bringing, real, stuff that's just not good. Stuff that is exciting because it looks new, but then you realize it looks new because people haven't brought it before, but people haven't brought it before because it's very weak to something. I could whip up an advanced team right now that is unlike anything. Like, it uses familiar Pokemon, it's unlike anything, and then you're like, wow, that's really cool, it's really interesting. Oh wait, it gets completely decked by Aerodactyl, for instance. So yeah, I wonder why no one's brought that before. Even if they thought of it, they'd be like, oh, well, I can't actually use that. But now I think, and I've kind of talked about this before in that video I made about ABRs, or the viability rankings with the awesome Chinatown thumbnail, or in another video, I forget which one. I've mentioned this kind of thing before. But, basically, yes, BMS, Bored Manor Syndrome, explaining BMS, where players play a single tier too much, and they get so bored with the standards that they, winning isn't enough for them anymore. And so they decide to try and force the issue with some junk, and then they wind up losing because of it. And to this end, to mention ABR again, he has never, ever gotten bored of using the best Pokemon and winning with standards. And that's why he's so consistent. Most other great players, they're like, I'm so sick of using Skarmory, I'm gonna, bring some junk now. And then they lose, and they're like, why did I do that? That was so stupid, I should have just brought Skarmory. It goes to playing, too. And this replay I picked, I am going to get to it in a second, but just let me finish this point. I even saw this great GSC player, all-time elite GSC player. He was in a tournament game, not an SPL game, but a tournament game, not long ago, and he just kept Skarmory in on Zapdos with a fully healthy team. He didn't. It's not like he was wanting for Zapdos checks at that point in the game. No, it was fairly early in the game, and he just left Skarmory on Zapdos, and the Zapdos missed Thunder and. It was really stupid. Now, you could say, oh, he was predicting so-and-so. It doesn't matter. Also consult another video, why prediction is overrated in competitive Pokemon. It's like, okay, so you want to risk Skarm coming in on, staying in on, Zapdos staying in and thundering Skarm, so you can what? So you can Toxic it, so you can rest it off, so you can Whirlwind it? What are you doing? The upside is not nearly worth the risk, which is Zapdos thunders and you lose Skarm and you lose to Snorlax. You preserve it. And my thinking, I was like, why would this player do this? And my only answer, because the response, oh, he predicted something else. It's like, yeah, but this is an elite GSC player. He knows more than anyone else how unbelievably stupid such a play was. And the only theory I could come up with that was satisfactory was, you know what? This guy has switched Skarmory out of Zapdos a million times in his life. I am certain that he just got bored of it and was like, you know what I'm going to do? Just once, just for kicks, I'm going to keep Skarmory on Zapdos and see what it's like. Yeah. And that's kind of what I feel to some extent. It's not like a one-size-fits-all explanation for the heatification of Advance. I think it's also partially, not just boredom and, let me try some goofy stuff because I just want to keep playing, but I'm sick of using the... at that point, really, step back and come back to the game with fresh eyes. Don't force the innovation just for the sake of it because you're bored. That's the worst time for innovation. The best time for innovation is when you've got a fresh eye and you're like, hey, why aren't people using this Metagross set? This Metagross set destroys everything. Because then you see this is a good idea and you're not just like, you know what, I'm going to stick Dynamic Punch on Metagross just because I bet it does something awesome. That's not a real example, but people come up with worse all the time. So, yeah. And the other thing is, I think, to get to this replay, I think that a lot of players new to Advance, they understand that Advance, yes, it is a generation very rewarding of creativity, but at the same time, what they fail to realize is that this is an old generation, and the standards are good for a reason. And then that tends to be the other angle from which they, force the what's it called? The over innovation. They overdo it through just thinking, this hasn't been used before, and here's my quandary. The big picture could be like, what? Maybe I'm missing something. I have a high standard for what I think should be used in serious tournaments. Maybe people just aren't taking these tournaments as seriously as they used to. I mean, I have another video planned on that, but it's a whole different subject. But, because I feel when I say, I'm all for innovation, then, it makes me sound like someone who isn't, But, I have a very long track record of trying to push things forward. And using stuff that at the time was, laughed at and then became a standard. To brag a little more, I apologize. But, yeah, and I see stuff that, this doesn't look good, and then it gets used, and then the other thing is that people can be fooled into thinking something is good when it's not. Because, especially in a best-of-one environment like SPL. And that's why I selected this game. Now, to be very clear, River is a very, very, very good player and a very, very good team builder. But at the time, this rubbed me the wrong way because this looks like a flashy team. Vaporeon, Jolteon, baton passing, mixed offense. Yeah, it's awesome. And it won, right? So it looks good. People are very results-based in Pokemon, which foolish under the best of circumstances. But yeah, then you see this game. And, look at how much luck was needed and how close it still came. It was, I think at the end, if Frudazi soft boils with, I don't know if the Metagross had Explosion or not. I think it might have been Agility, but even if it was, 4 attacks, boom, then tie at worst if he soft boils on the Jolteon, because very unlikely River risks Metagross. But it came down to hitting Meteor Mashes through Paralysis, and that's after all the luck that was going on. So, and then besides that, you look at this team and you look how completely, almost completely hapless it is into Blissey. You think, well, it beat a Blissey. How did it beat a Blissey? Through a lot of luck. Now, to be clear, River has since also said, yeah, that team wasn't good into Blissey. But this is kind of what I mean, and this is not to criticize River. This was her first SPL, and SPL nerves get the best players who have been around for a million years. So, again, this is not like a hit piece or something. This was just an example because it was the first one that came to mind because of the heatification. And I saw, people talking about it, that bring was heat. That team brought was heat. Everything gets shortened. And I'm like, yeah, it's cool because it's not used before. And this is where I feel like I'm an old codger, yelling at the kids for trying their progress. But I'm like, but it doesn't beat Blissey. Like, even the T-Tar set is not good. I don't know if it has Focus Punch or not, but it's certainly not reliable if it's Fire Blasting and Crunching. Mence doesn't reliably beat it at all. Starmie Walled, Jolteon Walled. Vaporeon Subpass, okay, but still not, threatening it. So you have 5 Pokemon that struggle, at best, struggle with Blissey, and then 1 that can threaten it. That's a recipe, and 1 that's weak to spikes, and both trappers, to an extent, especially Dugtrio. So yeah, and it was really through look, and then some advanced players were saying, like, this is really weak to Blissey. What's going on here? But see, even with this rock slide miss behind a sub, then arguably should have gone right to Skarmory, but because it could have been threatened with Toxic, he could have spiked, whatever it is. So now he's behind, but like then the Fire Blast burn, who knows how much that affected things, but the big one, I think, was that the T-Tar crits the Zapdos. And even with everything, then, look at this. Salamence, Refresh DD Brick Break Salamence is not a Blissey counter. And again, I'm sorry that I'm choosing to rip on River's team in particular, because there were plenty of other examples, and I will bring another one up just so it's not unfair. But this is exactly the, that was heat. And look, I like the game of Pokemon because of its intricacies, its details, its nuances, as I repeat to the point of tedium. And a lot of people don't find Pokemon that interesting because I don't think they think of it in the same way. They have a very surface level view of Pokemon, which there's nothing wrong with that. But then, they're like, why competitive? I just want to see cool stuff happen. Similar problems with discussing the cinema, actually. Anyway, so my point being that, I don't know, like focusing on the heat is cool, but it feels also like something more suited to environments that aren't, high-level tournaments. Because, and again, I feel like, no, I'm not trying to stop people from innovating the metagame. It's just, there's a fine line between innovation and just using something stupid. And even the best, most experienced players get it wrong often. But I feel like now more than ever, because Advanced is such an old tier, people are not content with, just using the stuff that's good, and they try to force this, really goofy stuff that, look, like, there's always something to be innovated. Just the other day, I'm not even actively thinking of Advanced, and I was like, oh, actually, that might be pretty cool. But, it wasn't something outrageous, little tweaks. And I think a lot of people with that surface level view of Pokemon, relatively anyway, they don't really go for, little tweaks on standard Pokemon as their kind of, as something that really excites them about the game. Personally, I find that really interesting, but it's more like, oh, cool, look at this awesome, I don't know, the fact that slacking is regularly getting used now, or semi-regularly, considering it's, slacking, that to me speaks volumes, because no, slacking is not a good Pokemon, and when it showed up in SPL, its flaws were very, very, very much on display, but, and I don't know if this is just people, following what ABR says, because it works for ABR, why doesn't it work for me? Well, I don't know, but here we saw again. Arctic Breeze is an excellent player and one of the best advanced minds. Very, very sharp, but he shoots himself in the foot because this Blissey is Thunderbolt Calm Mind counter. Now I'm sure it had some good thought behind it, but I mean it's also you see how it's just too much. Oh my God, the Flygon is named that. That's hilarious. Yeah, and there's just. Players shooting themselves in the foot constantly, I noticed, just by insisting on using something different for the sake of it. And I don't know why it is, because they really think, oh, this is... Sometimes things haven't been used before, and it's not for a good reason. It was just overlooked. Or the reason is, like, decent, like the metagame wasn't ready, or, the metagame was more hostile to it. Like Moltres wasn't always good into Advance, and then some things were happening, and it's like, hey, Moltres dissects everything. But yeah, this is I don't know. I feel like we are going to more and more extremes. Like, and I don't know if it's like even about being competitive so much as like to stand out. Because a lot of this. The competitive experience is also a social experience, and when it's a social experience, it's not just enough to play the game and win. You have to then kind of like be your own hype person, and brag about, oh, how it was so awesome. And like there's a classic example of how CL, one of the all-time best players, was like there's a real forum post where someone says, I never really rated CL that highly because they never talked about their own wins. They never talked at all. They never bragged. And I'm like, okay, so they don't brag about their wins, and that makes you not consider them as a player. And you see what I mean? It's so much optics, and I don't know. And this is why I think, I'm very tired and I'm just overthinking stuff. But yeah, you see, I don't know. You tell me. So this is the question I'm raising. And that is where we're going to leave things for today. I forget how this game ends, but yeah, okay, end it right there. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.